I really don't like even using ceramic cups anymore. I really don't, just in case that happens, because at least you can keep your cup if it's like metal or glass or whatever. But if you're screwed if a fly dies in a ceramic cup. I really don't like even using ceramic cups anymore. I really don't. We're gonna have some interesting commentary there. All right. Oh well.
Yeah.
It's Torah. It's important for people to know that. You pretty much can't keep an earthenware cup if a fly dies in there. You're screwed.
Gotta put a cover on it.
Yeah.
Well, unless it's fully glazed, it might protect it.
Yeah.
I was about to drink my kombucha and I saw that there was a fly in the bottle, and so I had to dump it out.
Oh my goodness, I hate that, man. I know way too well the frustrations of that. Yeah. Yeah, stupid flies, man. It's the one thing I don't like about summer. Flies everywhere. People don't want to keep their doors to the hallway closed, and then you get flies everywhere.
That verse that says that it tells us to keep our containers closed so that they aren't defiled. That's really been on my mind lately. Like I've been, this was actually this was actually Lizzie's kombucha that she left. But otherwise, I've been actually putting lids on everything. Like even if I walk away from it for like a little moment, like if I'm drinking it or whatever.
I've had to do that too.
All right. All right, so I'm just getting speaking of that, I'm getting my coffee in the Keurig right now. So, all right, we're live, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. To all those out there that didn't see our study last night, we officially started our Yahuwah's Feast of Yom Teruah last night. So today we're going to be doing a little bit of a Torah reading. We're going to see how far we get, for the rest of the Shabbat here today. So I think a good way to start this off, especially if there's beginners out there watching this, we're going to start here with Exodus 20. Now, just to explain why we're reading the Torah, if you go to Nehemiah chapter 8, 1 to 12, when they kept Feast of Trumpets, when they came back from the captivity, one of the main things they did on that Feast of Trumpets first time back was reading the Torah, and they had Ezra standing basically on a podium, you could say, teaching people the Torah. And so I'm going to start us off here in Exodus chapter 20. Okay, it says, and Alua spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahuwah, your Alua, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a graven image, or any likeness of that which is in the heavens above, or which is in the earth beneath, or which is in the waters under the earth. Now, it's kind of interesting that he says even something that's in the waters under the earth. That's kind of interesting. Knowing the mighty ones of the nations like I do is kind of interesting. He mentions in the waters. I'll give you a little bit of commentary chapter about that and why he might be saying that. You do not bow down to them nor serve them, For I, Yahuwah your Elua, am a zealous. The word there is zealous, not jealous, just to let you guys know. In the Hebrew and the Greek, it's in the Greek, it's zealot, like the zealots. So it's supposed to say zealous. I am a zealous mighty one or Elua, visiting.
Zeal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Visiting the crookedness of the fathers on the children of the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy or loving commitment to thousands to those who love me and guard my commandments. You do not bring the name of Yahuwah your Elua to nothing, for Yahuwah does not leave the unpunished one who brings his name to nothing. Now, again, bringing it to nothing would be, in the most basic understanding, you bring his name to nothing by misusing it, not using it. And again, misusing his name is not saying, oh my God. Okay. That's not misusing his name. Or saying JC in a derogatory way is not bringing his name to nothing. I know a lot of people have learned that tradition from the church. That's incorrect. Because God is not his name, Jesus is not his name. So anyway.
It's even worse than that.
So
because when they say JD, they're talking about the devil himself.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, to misuse Yahuwah's name would be to literally not use it at all. And according to the Hebrew of this, bringing it to nothing means calling him Lord, calling him God, calling him Hashem, calling him Adonai, calling him anything that's bringing his name to no meaning. Because Lord, if you look up the word Lord in the English dictionary, Lord just means someone's master. So you calling him Lord is like a woman calling her husband Lord. It's a title. It's not. He tells you, even in the book of Hosea, it says, "No longer will they call me Lord." Literally says that. So obviously he doesn't like it. So he says, "No longer will you call me my Bali." If you look at the word Baal or Bali, English is Lord. So he's literally saying, "No longer will they call me my Lord." Okay. He always wanted us to call him by his name. When you don't use his name by default, you're breaking this commandment. So the ironic thing about the traditions about this commandment in Judaism is they thought by not pronouncing it, by not using it, they were going to protect his name. In actuality, they broke his commandment with that tradition. And so that's the ironicness about that. Remember this. Oh, go ahead, brother.
I'd just like to add that it would also be making his name empty and void and taking it in vain if you are calling upon him, but not doing what he says. If your walk does not line up with what you're saying,
you
might as well not be calling on him then.
Yeah, and I would say the other interpretation, which is valid too, is the idea that using his name in an oath or a making a vow in his name and then not paying the vow is bringing his name to nothing as well.
For that,
which you actually see in scripture a lot of the times, or cursing his name is bringing it to nothing, which you see in the Egyptian. I think it was the son of an Egyptian man and a Hebrew woman did that, and he got put for doing that. So I would say there's like multiple ways you can do what this verse in verse 7 is doing, but the traditional understanding of that is not any of those three ways. So the whole misunderstanding, and well, if you say Jesus in a derogatory term, you're taking his name in vain and all that. That's church tradition. There's no proof for that. And Is it respectful to do that? Probably not, but again, it's not taking his name in vain.
Now, it's
So
interesting it's interesting you mentioned Bowie for Baal too, because if you remember
mhm,
the music artist David Bowie or Bowie,
mhm.
that was his Greek name. He had a Greek father and a Hebrew mother.
Mm, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. The verse I'm talking about that brother Dennis just reminded me about is Hosea 2:16-17. You can look it up for yourself, where Yahuwah verbatimly tells Israel, no longer will you call me Baal, you will call me your husband.
Yes.
So you can take that multiple ways. That means don't call me master anymore. I'm your husband. I'm not just your master. There's multiple ways you can take that verse. Either way, he doesn't want you to call him Lord. Either way, that to him is a disgrace to just be called Lord. So and another verse you could find this at where Yahuwah doesn't take this too kindly, substituting his name for Lord, is Jeremiah 23:27, which says that these false prophets have made his people forget his name. It actually says, let me paraphrase that better. No, it says that these false prophets would make his people, by their dreams, are trying to make his people forget his law, as their ancestors also made his people forget his name in the worship of Baal. So again, it's always connected to Baal worship, not claiming to serve Yahuwah, but you don't want to call upon his name. The problem with that is the origin of that custom is Baal worship. It's connected to worshiping Baal. That's where the whole not using his name probably originated from. Even with the Adonai, it goes back to Baal worship. So, right. Um, so now we're at commandment number 4 here. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart or to make it Kadash. So this is pretty self-explanatory. Now, what I like about Isaiah 58:13 is kind of interesting. Isaiah expounds on this command and makes it more clear what making it Kadash means. So if you guys want to know about that, you might want to read Isaiah 58 verse 13 all the way down to get the context of what it means to keep it Kadash. And there's other places too in the book of Jeremiah. It talks about don't physically bringing burdens and beasts, burdens of beastin on the Sabbath day. Don't open the gates on the Sabbath day. There's obviously other things like that we see later on.
Can I mention one thing?
Yeah.
Also, I noticed shortly after I came into truth that this is the only commandment that says remember,
Mm-hmm.
almost like he expected us to forget.
Mm-hmm.
Remember. Everything else said either do or do not. And this one starts with remember. And I find that there is an absolute uniqueness to this command. And if you look at it, it's much longer in length than the other. I'm not saying it's more important than the other commands. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that he goes into detail, both here as well as in many of the different prophets. And I remember being just in awe as I was reading Ezekiel, honestly, for the first time, when I came into his truth. And how many times does he talk about, not defiling his Sabbath? It's just chock full of it. So, just to mention that it's a very unique commandment outside of the others.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say also, even though it's not a commandment, there are other times he says remember. He also says, remember who I am. Remember, I am your mighty one who got you out of Egypt.
Right,
so
right.
he does say remember in other places.
Remember
but this is the only command, to my mother's point, that has remember attached to it, is what she's trying to say. So and then it says 6 days you labor and you shall do all your work. But the seventh day is a Shabbat of Yahuwah your Elua. You do not do any work, you nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. Now, it's important that phrase within your gates. It's important to take it a close look at that, because can we stop a mailman from delivering something that doesn't live within our neighborhood? No, not really. You can't stop a delivery person from delivering something. If they choose of their own will, you're not employing them, you're not telling them to do it, you're not hiring them to do it. It's out of your hands.
That's right.
At that point. So when I look at within your gates, that's an important part of that verse there, part of that commandment. So we also have to understand Yahuwah holds us to what we can do, what's in our hands, what's in our power to do within our hands. We cannot control what other people do. So anyway, for in 6 days Yahuwah made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore Yahuwah baruched the seventh day and set it apart. Okay, so 6 days, 6 literal days, he made the heavens and the earth. Okay, and he baruched the seventh day and set it apart. Respect your father and mother. If you have a decent translation, we'll say respect. Honor can kind of get a little confusing, because then people think you're supposed to, that commandment would tell you to put your parents above everyone and everything, to the point where you're putting them above Yahuwah. So I don't like the word honor too much, because it's been misinterpreted so badly by the church. I don't like the word honor. I really don't. That gives the wrong idea. Because I'll give you an example. Am I supposed to honor my dad if my dad's telling me to break the Sabbath? No. Am I supposed to honor any one of my parents if they tell me to eat shellfish or pork? No. So that's why I don't like the word honor, because it's not exactly a correct word to be used in verse 12 there. So I prefer the word respect there in the English. So that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahuwah your Elua is giving you. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. You do not steal. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet your neighbor's house. You do not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male servant, or his female servant, or his ox, or his donkey, whatever belongs to your neighbor. What I find interesting too here, a lot of people don't really talk about this, is that the law was really meant for Israel solely. Like, you see a lot of this says your neighbor, your neighbor. Really, the audience is Israel here. And the purpose of these top 10 is really how you treat your brother and sister in Messiah, in Yahuwah, and how you treat Yahuwah. Really, Gentiles are not really being mentioned here. Now, am I saying that this can't be applied to the world? No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is the intentional audience is mainly Israel here. And you see a lot of this. You see your neighbor, your neighbor, your neighbor, 3 or 4 different times, 3 or 4 different commands in a row, your neighbor. It seems like that's the main audience Yahuwah is directing these commands to, because to be allowed to guard his Torah, you have to be in covenant with him. You can't just say, I really like those rules, I like to follow them, but then you're serving Shiva, Ganesh, or Baal, or Apollo, or Zeus. That's not how it works. So you got to understand too, he did give the law to Israel, an isolated group. That's a fact. So when people usually of a certain religion will tell me, he only gave the law of Moses to Israel, but he gave us the 10 commandments, I have to correct them. No, he gave all one law to Israel. So if you think those other commandments are only for Israel and not you, then why are you trying to keep the top 10? You can't have it both ways. You can't. So, and also there's a misunderstanding of who Israel is. That's another big misunderstanding, because people are not taught this grafting in concept. Okay. The moment you accept Yahushua HaMashiach, Yahushua the Messiah, as your savior, you are a wild branch being grafted in. You're no longer a Gentile. So now you are required, because you're in covenant with the Creator, to keep this law. But at the same time, I think we got to be honest when we're witnessing to people and not trying to, this is just my opinion, we shouldn't be putting the egg before the chicken. If they haven't accepted Yahushua yet, we shouldn't be telling them to keep the Torah. You know what I'm saying? And that's, I get it. In this walk, we put a lot of emphasis on the Torah, but we need to understand it. If they don't accept the first part of the good news, there's no point telling them to keep the Torah if they're not going to accept the Savior. You see what I'm saying? So we got to make sure we have the chicken before the egg, or as the old saying goes. So anyway, so just to explain that, because I know that's the biggest excuse people use. Oh, it's only for Israel. Yeah, you're right, because he only had one people. Yeah. He only had one people he was in covenant with. So yeah, you're right. But does that mean you're not going to get judged by that law that he hasn't given you? No, you're still going to get judged. But as far as who's in covenant with the Creator and who is allowed to guard his law intentionally, he does make it very, very specific and very exclusive as far as covenant wise. So just wanted to explain that, because I know that's where we get the whole idea, because the whole world is under his law. So that means it, everyone should be keeping his law. And technically that's not true if the person is not converted. Technically that's not true if you witness. Let's just throw out a hypothetical here. You spread the Besorah to someone, right? They don't receive it at all. They utterly reject it. Now, do you start telling them to keep the law? No. You know what I'm saying? So we got to be careful about that, because there's been a little bit of confusion in this Hebraic awakening of telling Christians who are still in the church they need to keep the Torah. If they're still in the church, they're still under Satan. If they're still in the church, they're not consecrated to Yahuwah yet. If Yahuwah hasn't brought them out, you know what I'm saying? So we got to make sure that we don't have the egg before the chicken. We can't be telling them to do something that they're not even in relationship with the Creator yet. So, it would be like
it
telling
almost brings extra judgment upon them, because if you're, like for instance, when I was in Christianity still coming out, they would, I had people that would bring me, there were, I think, two Pesachs that I had with others, when I was still in Christianity and not in covenant with Yahuwah. That's not too, that brings more judgment upon me, or anyone else that's keeping it.
Yeah, but if you don't know the law, as Paul said, he didn't know he was a sinner until he knew the law, until he accepted the covenant and found out. And that's where Jacob's trouble, all of Yisrael, is in judgment now. But you ask a sinner, you ask a sinner, you need to repent. He'll say, repent of what? What have I done? He doesn't know.
I think where the confusion comes in, like I said, is that Paul does say the whole world is under the law. So I think where we get confused is, and it's understandable why we get confused because of that verse, is that we feel the need to tell the whole world to keep the law. The problem with that is, scripturally speaking, that doesn't blend with the Tanakh. That idea of telling the whole world to keep the law, when he only gave his law to be kept by his people. So the problem with that is so we have to understand what Paul is saying. He's talking about judgment. There's a difference between judgment and condemnation and the way covenant relationship works with the Creator. Not everyone are in. So this is a lot of church tradition we've been handed down. The idea that we're all one human family, book, chapter, verse on that does not say that. It does not say that we're all one family. There's two seeds from Genesis 3 on, spiritually even. There's two seeds. until you come and be grafted in by Messiah's blood, your daddy, and please forgive me, I don't mean this is a derogatory term, but your daddy's the devil if you're in the world. Okay, that's not my opinion. It's not my opinion, but all of us before Yahuwah called us, our daddy originally was the devil.
That's right.
Yahuwah adopted us. Okay, that means that everyone that is born into sin, Yahuwah is not their natural father when they're born into sin. They have to be adopted. So this should be a basic biblical concept, but the church confuses people. They tell people this garbage that we're all one family, that every human that's ever existed is a child of Yahuwah, and you're lying to people when you're telling people that. Any pastor out there that's hearing me right now, stop lying to people. Stop lying to people. So you're gonna lie and say a tear is a child of Yahuwah? No, not at all. If you actually look at what the context of Scripture all throughout, there's vessels of honor, vessels of wrath. That by default debunks the whole we're all children of Yahuwah. Okay. So we need to understand that. We need to understand. I know that's a whole other topic for a whole other day, but I believe the biggest crime the evangelical church has ever done is throw out election, throw out predestination. Biggest problem when you do that is now you're going to lie to people, tell the people, oh, you hear it all the time. Oh, JC loves you. Before they even spread the good news, they're saying that. And they're saying it like if they know that for a fact that he loves everyone. Like now you're putting words in Yahuwah's mouth. And I'm just saying we gotta be a little bit more careful about words we say. And that stuff like that. I understand the intent. The intent is genuine, but you're saying something that's not biblical. Yahuwah, Yahuwah was for his lost sheep, not the whole lost world. There's a difference. He was for his lost sheep. His sheep know his voice, not the whole world knows his voice. So there is a difference. There's a subtle character difference. The Messiah of the world is gonna say that you're all my children. The beast is gonna say you're all my children. The beast is gonna say you're all my children and you're all my lost ones. Yahuwah has specific lost sheep. Not all the world is his lost sheep. So it's important to understand that, because that false message has been given in the church and they don't even know, but they're serving the false Messiah. Just by believing in that, believing in ecumenicalism and universalism, you're already serving the beast and believing the beast as your Messiah, because that is his character, not Yahushua's character. And I'm not trying to harp on anyone, not trying to be mean, but I'm just being honest here. What Scripture says, a lot of the things we've been taught in the evangelical sect of Christianity is a lot of it's unbiblical. A lot of it is just man-made theology, just trying to make it sweet for people to eat up, because they worry about numbers. We want to get as many converts. Sounds familiar? When Yahushua would say to the Pharisees, oh yeah, you love all your converts, right? But you just made them more a child of Gehenna by what you told them. How's that any different than what the Christian church has done today? That's zero difference. That and Yahushua, if he was here, he would be rebuking them as well, just like he rebuked the Pharisees. So it's important to understand his characters. It's important to understand that his Torah. The reason I brought all this up is he's talking to Israel about how Israel is to treat one another. And yes, you like I said, I admitted that you could take verses 14, 15, 16, and 17 ecumenically, which is fine, but just realize he's saying your neighbor about 4 different times. He is making it specific who these commandments are for. He says, do not covet your neighbor's wife, do not covet your neighbor's possessions, do not covet, the servant of your neighbor, do not bear false witness against your neighbor. So Like, and that goes back to who Israel is supposed to worry about judging in government themselves. So, and that's a whole nother study. If you guys are interested, we did a whole, me and Brother Yahusha did a whole study that connects with verse 17 there. If you're interested, it's called Yahuwah's righteousness versus social justice. I really recommend that study. It's very important to understand. So anyway, then we go to verse 18. It says, all the people saw the thunder, the lightning flashes, and the voice of the shofar, and the mountain smoking, and the people saw it, and they trembled and stood at a distance, and said to Masha, you speak with us and we hear, but let not Alua speak with us lest we die. So these people are afraid of Yahuwah's voice. They see the lightnings, the smoke, the flashings. You know what's interesting is that certain literature out there actually says like lightning flashes and all that in heaven is messengers. So it's pretty interesting. So you possibly what they were seeing as lightning to the naked eye could have been Malachim with Yahuwah, which actually there's prophecy about that when Yahuwah would come to Mount Sinai, his Kadash ones would be with him. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha. I don't know if that's an old hand, new hand.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. In that same verse, I was just looking at towards the thunder and the lightnings and the sound of the trumpet.
Yeah, I think it's Enoch that characterizes what we see as flashes of lightning in the terrestrial realm. That's I forget if it says certain Malachim or Malachim in general, which by the way is not going against scripture, because if you look at Luke, right, Mom? Book of Luke, what does Yahusha describe Satan as? He says, I saw him with his eyes, saw him fall out of heaven as lightning. So he's given a physical description of a messenger, a heavenly messenger, that he looked like lightning when he fell from heaven. I don't think that's a metaphor. I don't think that's only a metaphor. I think that's physical. Just like Enoch talks about the messengers looking like lightning. I think we see that too with I forget where it talks about the columns of fire and stuff like that when they go through the wilderness. The certain people have hinted around that in the columns of fire, possibly seraphim could be in those columns of fire that would be with Yahuwah when he led Israel, in the cloud and all that, the columns of fire and all that. That could be seraphim in the flames of fire with Yahuwah leading them out of Egypt. So it's pretty interesting when you actually look into that. Like what we see in the terrestrial realm is just more of a reflection. It's not really, we don't actually see everything from the heavenly realm. So I just remember, I forget if it was Jim Staley that said that, but someone was talking about the connection with the seraphim, and that seraph means fiery ones. If you look at the concordance, the word seraph, the Hebrew word seraph means fiery or fiery serpent. So it would be pretty interesting if that's what was going on, where it talks about, he led them with a column of fire by night. If within that column of fire, you didn't just have Yahuwah by himself, but you had messengers with him that had an appearance of fire. I know there's other traditions, cultural traditions that portray the seraphim in that way as well. I think, I'm not too sure, it might be in the Islamic tradition as well. If I'm not mistaken, they call them fiery ones and all that, which probably they're just copying and pasting from the Bible at that point. But yeah, there's a lot of traditions about that. So when I always look at like a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, there could be something more there we're just not seeing on the surface.
Mhm.
But anyway, just like the lightning. It would actually make sense, especially with the lightning, that these are messengers here. Just because we see at the second coming, right? You have a trumpet, you have, isn't there supposed to be an earthquake too when he
Oh,
returns?
yeah, he's gonna shake it, yeah.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
there, when you look at this verse here about the smoke and the voice of the trumpet and the lightning flashes, that is a parallel of the second coming.
Mhm.
What does Yahusha say? He says, as lightning shines, as lightning flashes from the east to the west,
Mhm.
so will it be when I return. Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
verse 19 of chapter 20 is very important to pay attention to. So, and Masha said to the people, do not fear, for Alua has come to prove you, test you, in order that his fear be before you, so that you do not sin. So the people stood at a distance, but Masha drew near the thick darkness where Alua was. And Yahuwah said to Masha, say this to the children of Yasharal, you yourselves have seen that I have spoken to you from the heavens. You do not make besides me mighty ones of silver. You do not make mighty ones of gold for yourselves. Make a slaughter place of dirt for me, or earth for me, and you shall slaughter on it your ascending offerings, your peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle in every place where I cause my name to be remembered. I come to you and barak you. And if you make me a slaughter place of stone, do not build it of cut stone, for if you use your chisel on it, you have profaned it. Nor do you go up the steps to my slaughter place, lest your nakedness be exposed upon it. So, and that's the end of the top 10.
Mhm.
So I think from here on, we're going to just try to figure out what are really the important core commandments of the Tanakh to be reading about.
I wanted
Let's
to
see.
touch on that last part. Yeshai had brought up something very interesting at one point with the altar of let me see, go back to it. And if you will make me an altar of stone, you should not build it of hewn stones, for if you have lifted up your tool upon them, then they are defiled. You shall not go up to my altar by steps, that you may not uncover your nakedness upon it. And he had pointed out the not necessarily this is what it's saying, but I can see the correlation and where he's getting it from. That if you alter his Torah to try to, if you have any type of man's doings, like adding to, then you're defiling it. He had used this pointing to. I'll have to find it. I'll send it to you. It's interesting.
Mm.
He explains it better than I can. I can't explain it very well.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a purpose for that. I personally, I think a lot of why he commanded that is because he doesn't trust us with a chisel. He knows that obviously they came straight from Egypt. They are a lot of what is being said here in the top 10 has a lot to do with just idolatry, and he's worried about idolatry because they came from a Egyptian culture.
Yeah.
Where guess what, they do screw up about 12 chapters later, or was it yeah, about chapter 32, right, Mom?
What are we looking for? I'm sorry.
That would make sense
the
as
golden
far
calf.
as
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
only 12 chapters later.
Yeah.
Well, whoops. Yeah, right after he gave you the first tablets of stone, now Masha has to go back up there, get a whole new sapphire from the mountain. It's like, come on, I just gave you guys this. I told you guys because I knew your hearts. Don't do it. And then they do it anyway. And,
I think that's why the father buried Moses and nobody knew where his bones were. Because he knew their past. He knew what they would do very easily. They would make a shrine to him.
Yeah.
And, I think it makes sense that
the funny thing is that one commandment we're talking about is one of the biggest offenses of the church.
Yes, it is.
They have used cut stone for their altars. Not just that, but if you look into Deuteronomy, which I don't know if we're going to get to today, but there's a commandment in Deuteronomy says don't plant a tree next to the altar.
Yep.
Well, what do they do every December? They put a tree right next to the altar.
Yep, right on the altar.
Okay, so it's ironic the very things he tells people not to do. So it's just very ironic for a religious system that claims to serve the Most High. They're doing the exact things he told people not to do.
In pagan cultures, wouldn't they have to go up the steps in order to get to the altar?
Yeah, well, as
High
far
places?
as I do know culturally that the pharaohs had steps to them, and they thought themselves to be gods. So I guess you could say,
Yeah.
weird
And
ways.
you also notice that always Catholic Church or any church is on a hill.
Yeah. Yeah, the hills I think represent to them.
Place.
I think a lot of the times the hills, represent to them. We know scripturally that the high hills under every green tree on the high hills, they had the high places. They're always the pagans do that. And it probably goes all the way back to Mount Hermon. If I was to make a historical guess, it probably even goes all the way back to the Watchers.
Yeah.
And them being on a mountain and making a weird oath.
Yep.
It probably goes all the way back to them. So it's definitely historically the pagan stuff like that can be easily traced back to the fallen angels and stuff like that and why they do certain things. But yeah, going back to what Brother Yahusha said, you can see that in the Egyptian culture with the steps. They actually, I remember looking at something where it was like a midrash about, or a Mishnah or midrash of supposedly what Joseph had to do and how he had to learn each language. He went up each step after speaking each language. So it's like almost like they had a process for you to approach the Pharaoh. You had to know each and every of the 70 to 72 languages. So I would say in pagan culture, definitely they got steps even for the kings, and the kings thought themselves to be a god. So it's kind of like the same thing. That's the way they looked at themselves. So yeah, the steps are very, very fluent in the pagan culture, very fluent. And I can see Yahuwah not wanting his people to serve him the way the other peoples worship their mighty ones. We see that in Deuteronomy 12. And I think that's an important chapter we might get to today. Definitely by the end of the study, we're definitely going to go to it. That chapter is very good to review. I think from here on, though, since I mentioned the golden calf incident, I think that would be good just to read about that as a reminder of what can happen when we don't take heed to what Yahuwah is telling us to do. And then we could easily forget. Yahuwah knows that us humans have a forgetful mind and heart. So I think that might be a good chapter to kind of fast forward to, because I can't think of any other chapter in between that's as important as that chapter from here to there. So I think we'll have a new reader. Let me just see here. I do remember 23 being important too. Let me just see here. Let's see here. Okay.
Real quick, while you're looking for that, we'll have to go back and look at this later on. But I just came across this. The word being used in Exodus 25, where if you lift up your tool upon it, you have defiled it. It doesn't seem like it should be tool in the Greek or in the Hebrew. It seems like it should be sword or knife. You lift up your sword upon it.
Wonder what that means. Lift your sword upon it. I mean, I know they knighted people in British culture, but I don't know if they would do that in others. Or if they used it for some type of ceremony or ritual. I'm trying to think, why would someone lift their sword upon an altar? That's strange. Unless they would use a sword to cut it with, like to.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I could think of.
Like, that's the only thing I can think of with that one. I don't know. All right, yeah. I think we'll just stick with 32 here. 23 mainly is I mean, if people want to, they can read it on their own time, but it's mainly it's a good chapter, but I want to stick to like really important chapters here just because we got limited time today. Let's just see, because mainly what 23 is about, it's about property, personal property, and obviously talking about murder and stuff like that. And the main point from that chapter I always focused on was this is one of the first times after the Torah of Moshe is given that you see Yahusha being referenced as
That's right.
as his Malak, as Yahuwah's Malak, and to not disobey him. So that was one of the biggest parts of chapter 23 I always remember. But it as a whole, it's pretty much a self-explanatory chapter. I really want to get the golden calf incident in today because it's really good for people. If we got any new people in this walk listening in today, it would be really, really good for them to hear. Mom, would you like to read Exodus 32?
Sure. There. Okay. When the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us mighty ones who will go before us. As for this fellow Moshe, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Aaron answered them, "Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me." So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol calf in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, "These are your mighty ones, O Yashrael, who brought you up out of Egypt." When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to Yahuwah." So the next day, the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterward, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, "Go down, because your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, 'These are your mighty ones, O Yashrael, who brought you up out of Egypt.' I have seen these people," Yahuwah said to Moshe, "and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." But Moshe sought the favor of Yahuwah, his Elohim. "O Yahuwah," he said, Why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them out off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring your disaster on your people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then Yahuwah relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. Moshe turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of testimony in his hands. They were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of Yahuwah. The writing was the writing of Yahuwah engraved on the tablets. When Yahusha heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moshe, there is the sound of war in the camp. Moshe replied, it is not the sound of victory. It is not the sound of defeat. It is the sound of singing that I hear. When Moshe approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his anger burned, and he threw the tablets out of his hands, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And he took the calf they had made and burned it in the fire. Then he ground it to powder, scattered on the water, and made the children of Israel drink it. He said to Aaron, what did these people do to you, that you led them into such great sin? Do not be angry, my master, Aaron answered. You know how prone these people are to evil. They said to me, make us mighty ones who will go before us. As for this fellow Moshe, who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. So I told them, whoever has any gold jewelry, take it off. They gave it to me, the gold, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. Moshe saw that the people were running wild, and that Aaron had let them get out of control, and so become a laughing stock to their enemies. So he stood at the entrance of the camp and said, whoever is for Yahuwah, come to me. And all the Levites rallied to him. Then he said to them, this is what Yahuwah, the Elohim of Yashrael, says. Each man strap a sword to his side, go back and forth through the camp from one end to the other, each killing his brother and friend and neighbor. The Levites did as Moshe commanded, and that day about 3,000 of the people died. Then Moshe said, you have been set apart to Yahuwah today, for you were against your own sons and brothers, and he has baraked you this day. The next day Moshe said to the people, you have committed a great sin, but now I will go up to Yahuwah. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. So Moshe went back to Yahuwah and said, oh, what a great sin these people have committed. They have made themselves mighty ones of gold, but now please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written. Yahuwah replied to Moshe, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot out of my book. Now go, lead the people to the place I spoke of, and my angel will go before you. However, when the time comes for me to punish, I will punish them for their sin. And Yahuwah struck the people with a plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron had made.
Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the easiest chapters that we can apply to today.
Yeah.
And And there's a lot of themes in this that we can apply to our own lives. Have patience. Don't be anxious. Don't try to improvise. Don't try to serve Yahuwah your own way. Don't allow culture of the country that you're captive in dictate how you serve Yahuwah or worship Yahuwah. There's a lot of themes in this that we can get from that. Oh, go ahead, Brother Yahusha. I see your hands up.
You know, we talk about being ready for your family to turn on you, or not your family, but you know, those who think they're your family, your flesh and blood. And but something I never thought of it like this until you know, the Luim went throughout the camp and slaughtered their brothers and sisters. And in order to be the 144,000, in order to be the bride, you know, just realize you're going to have to be ready to execute judgment upon your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, whoever is not serving Yahuwah at that time. You're going to have to you're going to have to slaughter them.
Yeah, this idea that we're supposed to be loyal to someone because they have the same blood as us is not a biblical concept. You know, I think where that comes from is man's philosophy, just a sense of entitlement in a way, because we're raised to think, oh, family's above everything. Well, not really. If your biological family is in the wrong, you don't cover for them just because they're your family. And that's a concept that's out in the world. Like you'll have someone defend their sister of their own blood, that's completely outright in the wrong, like even in the law, and they'll defend them to death even though they know they're in the wrong. You know, so I see that is a very worldly philosophy that is not supported by the Bible at all. So yeah, it's just that we've been indoctrinated into that, and it's taken us a very long time to understand that to Yahuwah, your family is not your blood relatives. To him, that doesn't automatically make someone your part of your mishpachah or your family. Your family is those that are serving him. If they're not serving him, if they're not in covenant with him, they're really not really your family. And so
he gave the example when his own brothers and mother were coming to see him, and they're all telling him, your mother, your brothers, your sisters, they're all there. He says, my mother and my brothers are those that obey my father, and those that, you know, so he gave us that example.
And this goes back to what we were talking about before when we read Exodus 20. This goes back to that not all humanity is Yahuwah's children. And we need to understand that, because if they've chosen not to, of their own free will, not to believe in him, not to believe in Yahushua's sacrifice, they have chosen to be led by the spirit of the world, to be led by the principality of the power of the air, which by default, if someone is not in this faith, their father cannot be Yahuwah. Their father, spiritually speaking, is the devil. And that's the reality. So we have to also understand this spiritual war that's going on, that like Brother Yahushua is talking about. Okay. You might love someone to death, they might be your blood, but just realize, spiritually speaking, Yahuwah is not their father. Just realize that the devil's their father. And at this particular point in time, if they're not converted, they are a child of the adversary, of our enemy. And
yeah,
so,
my son's in that category, unfortunately.
So says Shalom. I don't mean that as an attack on anyone, but just realize that when the tribulation happens, bloodline is going to mean nothing. Okay, they are going to sell you out for a piece of bread. Okay, just to use the old saying. Okay, they're going to sell you out for a little morsel of bread. Okay, the world cares about its own. Okay, so we need to start caring about our own, because the world's only going to care about its own, and it's that simple. So
It doesn't really care about them. It wants to
yeah,
kill them.
yeah, I could say they conditionally care about themselves or care about one another of their own, to an extent to what they can use people for. That's how the world works. What can you do for me? But what we got to understand is, and I'm glad Brother Yahusha brought this up, because I've even had false accusations in the past. Oh, I turned on my own family because I won't speak to certain people of my own family. That's nothing compared to what Yahuwah told the Levites to do here in Exodus 32. He told them to kill their own physical brothers and even some of them their sons. Okay.
Where you're at right now in your walk, should you be sent forth with Yahusha to go down and execute judgment? In all honesty, like, I know if you're that number, he'll get you there, but where you're at right now, would you be able to look at your dad in the face and run him through with his sword?
Probably. I probably would. I care about him, but I don't think I would have been ready if Yahuwah the Most High told me to do that in 2015, 16, probably not. But now that he's separated me spiritually and physically from him for so long, I really have lost. I don't have the same amount of love that I really had for him, because I've grown so. Yahuwah has got me to a point of growing so much in maturity that me and him are like two opposites in character, personality. I don't even recognize myself in him anymore. I think that Yahuwah used him for whatever reason to be my dad. I think a lot of it had to do with the wisdom he gave me to become a man. But as far as spiritually speaking, a lot of the wisdom my dad tried to give me, I did not pay attention to, because it was from the Catholic Church. It was from the church. I kind of just ignored it, because I knew where it was coming from. But to answer your question, yeah, I probably would. If I knew for a fact Yahuwah was telling me to do it, I love Yahuwah more than man. I don't care. Oh well. If people think that's harsh, oh well. But the point is that ultimately we got to start realizing that, because guess what? If and I think this is the way I look at it. If we hold on to our family longer than he wants us to, and he's constantly telling us to walk away from our family, all that's going to do is put us in that position in the tribulation. We're actually putting ourselves in that position of being to be betrayed for the mark of the beast, because we're staying with people that are not equally yoked. And so it's almost like we're forcing Yahuwah's hand to allow us to be betrayed by our own family, rather than if Yahuwah's, poking on you, listen, yeah, leave. He's not even telling us to kill anyone, by the way, just to be fully transparent. Me and Brother Yahusha right now are talking about hypotheticals. Okay. Yahuwah didn't tell me to kill my dad. He told me he gave me a nudge, like, listen, you got to let him be. Let him be. He's not called. Let him be. You need to let him go. Move on with your life. Let him have his life, and that's it. That's all Yahuwah told me to do. So if we can't even do that, we're going to be, even if we can't do a little thing like that, we're going to be in trouble in the tribulation. If we can't even pick up our stake and walk away from family, you can't even walk away from family or lose connection with your family. What's going to happen when the tribulation comes, where now the devil's going to use your family against you? Because ultimately, if you think the beast is not going to have one of your family members to sell you out to get you to get the mark of the beast, come on. All right, let's, this is, and this is why Yahusha says, and Yahusha himself said, I came to bring division. We see this all throughout the scripture. I came to bring division, a father against a son against a father, daughter against a mother. He's not just talking about the world. He's talking about his own people. So you got to
Why
realize,
Georgia?
yeah, yeah. So he's talking about Israel too when he's talking about that. So just realize that too. He's talking about his own people, saying a father against the son, mother against the daughter. So he's speaking to the disciples, telling them that. So he's kind of letting them know, listen, you haven't done nothing to follow me yet. Okay. Because he even says, oh yeah, you guys will say I left my father and this and that. And he was just trying to get it settled in their brain. Like, really, they haven't done anything yet to follow him. So, yeah, I mean, Exodus 32 is a great example of if you think Yahuwah would not tell you to leave your physical family, even just cutting off contact from them, you're sadly mistaken, because he told the Levites to kill their own family. So if we can't do the little things, how are we going to do the bigger things?
That's right.
So if we can't even do the littlest thing, which is just cut them off, you're not killing them, you're just cutting them off, you're just, cutting contact off. Which I believe right now Yahuwah is probably not going to tell us to kill anyone yet.
I don't mean any time before his day, before he comes, but those of us alive when he comes and are caught up with him to come back and execute his judgment.
Oh yeah,
definitely will have to.
Oh, we will, because not just our family, but any friends of the world we have, we will probably have to execute his judgment on them too. So any friends from your past, you're going to have to be able to deal with that, because that's what his angelic army is doing on the day of Yahuwah, to Brother Yahusha's point. Okay. When you become that first resurrection, you're becoming a Malachim. That's essentially what's happening.
Yeah.
So you're becoming part of that Kadashim army of Jude 1 that's going to execute his wrath, not just judgment, wrath on the earth. And part of your job is destroying a good 80-90% of mankind. So that's something we got to settle in our minds, to Brother Yahusha's point. We can't let our emotions down. I don't think it's going to be a problem anyway, because once you're given a new body, there's no more sinful flesh in you. When you become a Malach, there's no flesh in you that's going to really cause you to fight it. But it's good to get our minds to that point even before that would have to happen, because I do believe that stuff is going to happen in the tribulation where you're going to be forced to have to at least defend your life from so-called family members that want to sell you out. That's at least going to happen, because we see that that's the way the world's going. They're going to label people that don't want to take the mark of the beast as like radicalists. A lot of us are going to be put in jail. A lot of us are going to be, our life's going to be ended. So it's a good thing to think of. And that's a good lesson to take from Exodus 32 right now is, are we truly ready to do whatever it takes? Are we truly ready to do whatever it takes to say goodbye to this world? And that includes biological family members that are part of the world. So, and again, there's even a scripture, I think, in Luke that says in the kingdom that he's going to tell his disciples to kill those that would not accept him. It says it right in the book of Luke. So this is what I mean by, do you know the Most High, or are you still serving this hippie, all love, no wrath God of the church? Because there's many times in the New Testament it shows Yahusha that part of his character is wrath. Part of his character is putting sinners to death. And this is the problem with what the church has done with this JC guy. Okay. This JC guy, which most of the world believes in, is an ecumenicalist God, ecumenicalist Messiah, loves everyone, would never hurt a fly, and it's gotten to the point where no one really knows Yahushua's true character anymore because he's been replaced in that religion. He's been replaced. It's replacement theology. Okay, so you got this all-loving. So this is why we're looked at as evil. This is why we're going to be looked at as evil in tribulation, because most of those that even claim to believe in the Bible are serving another Messiah to begin with. They're not serving the true Messiah. The true Messiah is a alua of judgment. Okay, a righteous Elohim cannot have sin in his presence. He cannot be allowing sinners that are outright lawfully sinning to physically be in his presence. That's why he has to put people to death. And it's that simple as that. He's a righteous judge. He has to do what the law says he has to do. He is the law. He is all the commandments. If he's the word made flesh, that means he's every single commandment in the Torah made flesh, which includes capital punishment. So if you truly believe in the Most High, you have to accept all of his character, not just the parts of his character that you like. And that's what the Christian church has done. They kind of cherry picked with creating this JC character. They kind of cherry picked some of Yahushua's qualities, gave it to him. But ultimately, the major difference is that the JC guy is all love, no wrath, no judgment. He doesn't want his people to judge anyone. Don't judge, twisting Matthew 7. Okay, so when you really look at the two belief systems, the true Nazarene Messianic Abri faith versus Christianity, the major difference is who they serve. And it's a polarized difference. So there's no way you can mistaken the two. When you look at that, there's it's gotten so bad that when I mention the word election, demons seem to manifest. I mean, it's bad. It's people have been sold a different Basora, a completely different Basora. So, it's important for whoever, I know that's for someone out there. So for whoever, Yahuwah was leading me to talk about that for, hopefully that was for someone out there. But, we need to start being more attentive about understanding who he is, who Yahushua is, who Yahuwah is, because part of serving him is knowing him. And it's not, I'm not trying to down prayer life. Prayer life is important too. It's important to get into prayer life and stuff like that and spend time with him. But we also need to know who we're serving. We need to know who he is. Okay? Because ultimately, if it, and I've heard this all my life, if you don't know who the creator is, you'll start having your own creator in your own mind that you're serving. If all you believe about the creator is this, so and so told you this, and so, you start creating your own God in your mind that you're serving, rather than Yahuwah. So,
which a lot of the times comes from not reading the word because people don't know what it says.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to. Like, so and so will tell you this, so and so will tell you that, and you start getting all this mixed, weird theology about who the creator is. Because you're not reading the word, you're just listening to someone tell you something. Like, I'll give you just one more example, we'll move on. I'm pretty sure you guys heard this phrase, right? Hate the sin, not the sinner. Not one verse in the Bible says that. Not one verse in the Bible tells you to do that. Yet, every person on a pew in a church tells people that. Almost every preacher says that I've heard will say that, oh, you're not supposed to hate the sinner, you hate the sin.
It actually says the opposite.
If you look at the book of Psalms,
That's right.
David hates sinners. You look at the book of Psalms, he says, oh, Yahuwah, I know you have hated the sinner. So this is why I mean, guys, we need to start testing what people have taught us all our lives. We need to start testing to making sure that what someone has taught you is in the word and it's not just something they thought up in their head. because a lot of the theology we learned in our church upbringings is garbage.
Yeah.
A lot of it is not in the word. A lot of it is just hearsay. Oh, so-and-so told me this, so-and-so told me that. If what they told you is not in the word, it's their own opinion. And it doesn't mean anything if it's just opinion. So that's something we need to understand, because that's one of the big differences Yahuwah has shown me between him and who the Christian church serves. Yahuwah hates sin and the sinner, not just one or the other. So what we need to understand about John 3:16, we cannot take an ecumenicalist understanding about John 3:16. John 3:16 has to be understood in the light of every other New Testament verse about salvation. It has to be taken into the light of Matthew, the book of Matthew. He came to save his people from their sins. That's what Matthew says. So can John contradict Matthew? No, it can't. So we need to stop taking one little isolated verse completely out of context and getting a Catholic ecumenicalist understanding, because we're not being honest with scripture if we do that. So, but I think that's where people get the misunderstanding of that, and they say, well, it says he loved the world, okay? But okay, to stop there, it says that those that would believe in him. It says those that would believe in him. That doesn't mean the whole world.
Right.
So if you actually even read the whole verse in context, it actually says he loved the world. And I really like how the Aramaic says it, of David Boucher's translation. It says he so loved the world in this way, that whoever would believe in his son would have eternal life. Does not mean that he unconditionally loves everyone. And that's, I could go on a whole days and days about the false theology that the church has taught people and all the false characteristics people have been taught about Yahuwah, which leads them to receive another good news and another mighty one who is not even Yahuwah. So anyway, just sorry guys for ranting a little bit, but I just felt the need to get that out because I'm tired of people being deceived. I'm tired of people holding on to this garbage from the source when Yahuwah calls them out. Okay, so I really want you guys to understand what we're saying here. So, anyway, but we read Exodus 20, Exodus 32. Trying to see what other really important chapters about the Torah here. Just kind of skimming through here. Oh, I know what I wanted to go next with. We could choose a new reader. I wanted to go to Deuteronomy 4 because there's it's a good reiteration of what we see in Exodus 20, but there's some other stuff that's important as well that correlates with what we're talking about. So, and I think we might end Yahuwah willing with Deuteronomy 12, which is another important core chapter in the Torah. Let me see here. So, Brother Dennis, would you like to read chapter 4 of Deuteronomy?
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah, if he needs help halfway through, we could have someone else. I didn't realize it was that long. Okay. Let's see, brother. If you could at least make it to verse 25, we can pick a second reader to finish it off.
Okay. Deuteronomy 4. Okay. It's 25. Now, O Yisrael, listen to the laws and the right rulings which I am teaching you to do, so that you live and shall go in and possess the land which Yahweh Elohim of your fathers is giving you. Do not add to the word which I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I am commanding you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh did at Baal Peor, for Yahweh your Elohim has destroyed from your midst all the men who follow Baal Peor. But you who are clinging to Yahuwah, your Elohim, are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you laws and right rulings, as Yahuwah, my Elohim, commanded me to do thus in the land which you go to possess. And you shall guard and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding before the eyes of peoples who hear all these laws. And they shall say, only a wise and understanding people is this great nation. For what great nation is there which has Elohim so near to it, as Yahuwah our Elohim is to us, whenever we call on him? And what great nation is there that has such laws and righteous right rulings, like all this Torah which I set before you this day? Only guard yourself and guard your life diligently, lest you forget the words your eyes have seen, and lest they turn aside from your heart all the days of your life. And you shall make them known to your children and your grandchildren. Day when you stood before Yahuwah, your Elohim, in Horeb, Yahuwah said to me, assemble the people to me, and I make them hear my words, so that they learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and teach them to their children. And you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire to the heart of the Shemayim, heavens, darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. And Yahuwah spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard a voice of words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. And he made known to you his covenant, which he commanded you to do. The 10 words, and he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And Yahuwah commanded me at that time to teach you laws and right rulings, for you do them in the land which you pass over to possess. Therefore, diligently guard yourselves, for you saw no form when Yahuwah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you should do corruptly, and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, likeness of any beast that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the heavens, the likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. And lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens, and shall see the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and all the host of heavens, and you be drawn away, bowing down to them and serving them, which Yahuwah your Elohim has allotted to all the people under all the heavens. But Yahuwah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Mitzrayim, to his people, an inheritance as it is today. And Yahuwah was enraged with me because of your words, and swore that I would not pass over the Jordan, and that I would not enter to the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. For I am to die in this land. I am not passing over the Jordan, but you are passing over and shall possess that tube land. Guard yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he has made with you, and shall make for yourselves a carved image in the form of whatever Yahuwah your Elohim has forbidden you. Yahuwah your Elohim is a consuming fire, a jealous Allah. When you bring forth children and grandchildren, and shall grow old in the land, and shall do corruptly, and make a carved image in the form of whatever, and shall do what is evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, your Elohim, to provoke him. I shall call the Shemaim and earth to witness against you on that day, that you soon completely perish from the land which you pass over the Jordan to possess. You do not prolong your days in it, but are completely destroyed. That was 26. I'll continue 25.
Okay. Great job, bro.
Beautiful, great, yeah.
So just to summarize before we choose a new reader to finish off the chapter here, because there was actually a good decent bit of stuff he actually went to very that Yahuwah's giving Masha to tell them to kind of recount the Exodus 20 account we read earlier. So basically he recounts the 10 sayings, all that, and then kind of expounds and reminds them about the graven images commandment and to be careful not to go away from the word that Yahuwah has Masha commanding them. So let's just see here. Some interesting stuff here, like what other great nation has laws like these. We see later on that Yashar kind of takes that and kind of, at the time of Yahusha, almost like they kind of idolize themselves and think, well, we're so great, and because he gave us the Torah, we're such a great people, and they kind of get a little bit prideful from that statement later on. And that's why Yahuwah would always remind them, listen, it wasn't because of your righteousness I did this, because I loved your ancestors. It wasn't because of you. It's because your ancestors served me and obeyed me. So multiple times Yahuwah kept reminding them, it has nothing to do with you. It's not because of your strength that I'm delivering these nations to you. So let's see here. Then it talks about teaching the Torah to their children and their grandchildren. So let's see, put on the mountain. So it calls back to when they were on Mount Horeb. What's interesting, it says diligently guard yourselves multiple times in this chapter. So Yahuwah is putting an emphasis on this amount about don't go to the right or left. Again, his focus really here is on idolatry. Carved image of any likeness, male or female. I thought that was pretty important there. Likeness of any beast that's on the earth, or likeness any winged bird that flies in the heavens. Likeness of any creature that creeps on the ground, or likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. What's interesting here, he's more specific, but Exodus 20, he's more generalized about those that are in the waters. So I kind of wonder if, going back to that, if Yahuwah was trying to allude to the mighty ones of the nations in Exodus 20, and that there's something out there called the Marine Kingdom, if you've heard of it, okay, where you got, Nephilim of the water, okay, you got weird creatures that people think are fake, that Yahuwah might be commanding against, also making graven images of them as well, since all it says in Exodus 20 is anything in the waters. So it seems like he's kind of leaving room for a more generalized type of commandment in Exodus 20. But that's just something I thought of just now. But I find it interesting. It says, do not even make a likeness of a male or a female. The reason I find this interesting is because, again, going back to the church, they on purpose make a male image of what they claim to be the image of the Messiah, which is definitely not his image. Okay, so they're actually transgressing this commandment of do not make an image of male or female. What do you see in the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Images of male, female, and other things. So, and it talks about what I really like verse 19 here. It says, lest you lift up your eyes to the heavens, you shall see the sun the moon, the stars, all the armies of heavens, and you shall be drawn away into bowing down to them and serving them, which Yahuwah your Elohim has given to all the peoples under the heavens. Now that's going to be like a controversial thing right here. Yahuwah is telling Israel not to worship them, but he says to the Gentiles, to the heathen, to those that rejected me at the Tower of Babel, I have given to them. And how do I know that's talking about the Tower of Babel? I'll just show you guys something, because I doubt we're going to be able to read 32 today. So let's go to Deuteronomy 32 real quick. I'm going to show you guys the context here. I'm talking about this historical context. Okay. Go to Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided the nations, meaning separated the sons of Noah, descendants of Noah, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries, meaning countries or land masses of the nations, according to the number of the Angelos, Theos, angels of Elohim. And his people, Jacob, became the portion of Yahuwah. Yasharel was the line of his inheritance. But notice how he says only Jacob became his portion. Now, this goes back to what I was talking about. Yahuwah has one nation that he's calling his own. The other nations he's not calling his own. He's given them to principalities. He's given them to govern them. Psalms 82, okay? Like I said, like I was talking about last night, I'll reiterate, it is paramount to understand Genesis 6 to understand the rest of the Old Testament, and it's paramount to understand Psalms 82, who is really being talked about as the mighty ones of Psalms 82, to understand the rest of the Tanakh as well. Because those are two big themes in the Tanakh that get reiterated a bunch of times. So in going back to verse 19, Deuteronomy 4, yes, Yahuwah literally gave the principalities to those other nations. Literally, that's what it's saying. So, and to understand that, you have to understand that when someone becomes utterly reprobate to Yahuwah, Yahuwah is giving them into a reprobate mind to worship the host of heaven. That's essentially what's happening. When they get to a point of no return. And to a certain amount of Israel, according to Acts 7, when Israel became apostate, that's what he allowed them to do as well. So he was fair. He treated them the same way he treated the Gentiles that didn't want to serve him at the Tower of Babel. Because Stephen in Acts 7 says he handed them over to into the worship of the host of heaven. So we see that, we see that as a very fair, equal punishment, even for his own people. But Yahuwah has taken you, brought you out of the iron furnace in Egypt to be his people, inheritance as it is today. Yahuwah was enlarged with me, or I should say angry. Oh, my bad. Enraged with me. Okay, that makes more sense. Enraged with me because of your words. And I would not pass over the Jordan, and I would not enter the tube land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. For I am to die in this land. I am not passing over the Jordan. You are passing over and shall possess the, unless you forget the covenant of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he made with you, and you shall make for yourselves a carved image in any form. So it seems like idolatry is connected with forgetfulness. I just find that interesting. For Yahuwah your Elohim is a consuming fire, a zealous Elohim. And then obviously we have verse 25 and 26 talking about what you should be telling to your children, your grandchildren. Okay, so, all right, so I think we're going to do a new reader for verses 27 to 49. All right, let's see who hasn't read yet or got a chance to read yet.
we back in Exodus now?
No, we're in Deuteronomy.
Oh,
We're
okay.
we're just finishing the chapter, Mom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're still on Deuteronomy 4. Sister Milka, are you able to read verse 27 to the end of Deuteronomy 4?
Yes.
Cool. Thanks.
Mhm.
All right.
And sorry, whenever you're ready.
Almost. Just stupid phone. Come on. All right. All right. Yep, ready.
Okay. And Yahuwah shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yahuwah shall lead you. And there ye shall serve Elohim, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, whom neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But if from thence you shall seek Yahuwah, you shall find him, if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. When you are in tribulation and all these things are come upon you, even in the latter days, if you turn to Yahuwah and shall be obedient unto his voice. For Yahuwah is a merciful Elohim. He will not forsake you, neither destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers, whom he swore unto them. For ask now of the days that are past, whom were before you, since the day that Elohim created man upon the earth, and ask from the one side of the Shamayim unto the other, whether there has been any such thing as this great thing is, or has been heard like it. Did ever people hear the voice of Elohim speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard and live? Or has Elohim essayed to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation? By temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by a mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Yahuwah did for you in Mitzrayim before your eyes? Unto you it was showed, that you might know that Yahuwah is Elohim. There is none else beside him. Out of the Shamayim he made you to hear his voice, that he might instruct you, and upon the Haaretz he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and brought you out in his sight with his mighty power out of Mitzrayim, to drive out nations from before you, greater and mightier than you are, to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance, as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider in your heart, that Yahuwah, he is Elohim, in heaven above, and upon the Haaretz beneath. There is none else. You shall guard therefore his statutes, his commandments, whom Moshe command you this day, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days upon the Haaretz, whom Yahuwah gives you forever. Then Moshe severed 3 cities, on this day of the Yarden toward the sun rising. Severed, 3 cities on this side of the Yarden toward the sun rising, that the slayer might flee thither, whom should kill his neighbor unawares, and hated him not in times past, and that fleeing unto one of these cities he might live. Namely, Betzer in the wilderness, in the plain country of Revunim, and Ramoth in Gilead, of the Gadim, and Golan in Bashan, of Menasheim. And this is the Torah whom Moshe set before the children of Yasharal. These are the testimonies and the statutes and the judgments whom Moshe spoke unto the children of Yasharal after they came forth out of Mitzrayim. On this side of the Yarden, in the valley over against Bet Peor, in the land of Shion, king of the Amorim, who dwelt at Heshbon, whom Moshe the children of Yasharal smote, after they were come forth out of Mitzrayim. And they possessed his land in the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorim, whom were on this side of the Yarden toward the sun rising. From Arur, whom is by the bank of the river Arnon, even unto Mount Sion, whom is in Hermon, and all the plain on this side of the Yarden eastward, even unto the sea of the plain under the springs of Pekah.
Hallelujah. All right. So, Mom, you have anything?
Not not really, honey.
Okay. All right. So,
Verse, hold on, let me find it again. Verse, the nation has heard. Verse 34. Yahuwah, or did Yahuwah ever try to go and take for himself, or did an Elohim ever try to go and take for himself a nation out of the midst of another nation by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great sights, according to all the things which Yahuwah our Eloah did in Mitzrayim in your sight? It's interesting that this is all talking about the things that happened in Mitzrayim, and it says by war, even though people did not fight against one another. So it's literally here pointing to that Yahuwah waged war against their mighty ones. I never got that before right here.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I believe that it was very one-sided.
Oh
They
yeah.
were probably afraid to fight against him. All those that were, I personally believe, a lot of the mighty ones, not just of Egypt but of the world, eventually, or originally, they were part of that council in heaven, and they realized, okay, we're gonna just not do anything right now because we're not trying to die. We know that he's gonna judge us at some point, and we're gonna just, you know. So I think that's why, so to speak, you don't see really any of these gods of Egypt really fighting back because they know that they're no match.
I think at one point they did. I think in order for the magicians to, I think at some point they just stopped. But in order for the magicians to, at least as far as my understanding of witchcraft, you can't do it without the help of demons, and maybe they weren't using fallen angels or fallen malachim, but they were definitely using the help of something other than themselves in order to do the things they did. Maybe that wasn't. Maybe they weren't necessarily waging war. Maybe Yahuwah gave them permission to do those things. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some interesting traditions about
No, don't even get me started with that, man.
these things. There's some, I remember reading one tradition, supposedly, I don't know how likely it's true or not, but supposedly Satan himself was eating Janus and Jambres to turn the staff into the serpent to try to match their to try to beat the Masha's staff that Yahuwah caused to turn into a serpent. So it's almost like Satan tried at some point.
Sure. Yeah.
According now, this is now just to put it in perspective. I'm not saying this is true or not. This is like Mishnaic rabbinical tradition, but if there's any truth to it, it would seem like Satan was trying to fight Yahuwah, and that they felt like, well, if we're gonna fight back, we might as well get one of the chiefs of that demonic kingdom to fight him, because they probably figured, okay, well, Satan, he's already, we might as well let him fight because who has already declared war with him anyway. In Genesis 3, so we might as well let him do it. Yeah, I kind of wonder where it stopped. I think it probably stopped at the serpent thing. I don't think they because we really don't see any like strike back. When you look at the blood, the rivers turn into blood. The Nile god didn't try to fight back. Frog, he didn't try.
Well, I mean more like the we see them performing false miracles all the way up until I think the fourth plague.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
With Janus and Jambres, what was the book that now that we're on that, and what was the book that said that they went up to they followed them into the wilderness and they ended up going up into the Shemayim and waging war against the messengers, and that the messengers couldn't overtake them? You remember what I'm talking about?
Probably Jasher or some weird book like that. I do know that there's the account of Satan eating them definitely seems plausible, but yeah, that weird story of them going up to heaven, I seriously
They had I think it might have been second or third Hanuk actually, because I think it said that they had to like bring in Metatron in order to just to defeat them.
yeah.
I think, I'm not sure.
Yeah, which there's a lot of issues with that story because if you know anything about the Kabbalistic view of Metatron, they think Enoch was Metatron, so you would have a huge overlapping of generations there if that's the case. And I guess you could say, well, if someone turned into an angel, they're eternal and all that, but I don't know, to me it sounds very far-fetched. It sounds very they're that type of tradition. I definitely think it's just a legend. As far as Satan though being the one to aid them when they were fighting against Moshe and Aaron, I could see that being possible because we see that in a lot of extra biblical traditions, even about Manasseh. Supposedly, Satan dwelled. There's one extra biblical tradition where King Manasseh, when he was wicked, Satan dwelled in his heart, like, and was almost like one with him, like how some of us believe the beast is going to be, how Satan's going to be one with him. And we see like certain extra biblical apocryphal traditions where it seems like Satan or some type of power of the heavenlies on the evil side is aiding wicked men, to turn Israel apostate and all that. So I could definitely see the idea of Satan helping Janus and Jambres trying to match Yahuwah's, miraculous wonders. And obviously Yahuwah would allow Satan to have that power. It's not out of the realm that Yahuwah would not allow Satan to do that. I mean, he's going to allow him to do it in the end times to deceive people. So, Yahuwah obviously could allow a fallen Malachim to have similar miraculous wonders, maybe not exactly equal, but certain miraculous wonders that people would be deceived. So I definitely think that's plausible. But the one about them going up to heaven, man, that's like stretching it a bit. That's kind of like the legend about the Pharaoh surviving supposedly the Pharaoh of the Exodus surviving the waters and somehow repenting to serve Yahuwah and being a king of Nineveh and all that. There's some of them are just like way unrealistic that I can't receive as being something historical. But as far as Satan or a power of heaven that fell helping Janus and Jambres, to me that seems possible or plausible. With that, you see a lot of the times in scripture where, like you said, divination, no person can really commit divination unless they have a spiritual force that's giving them the ability to do it. Even these so-called magicians of today, they're basically channeling demons. Really all they're doing. They don't have that power of themselves. They'll lie to people and say, oh yeah, you have that hidden power of yourself. And that's how they recruit people. But in actuality, no, it's a spirit. It's a spirit causing someone to have that ability. So yeah, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see, but it's very interesting to me, yeah, that just, it was a war. It was Yahuwah defeating the mighty ones of Egypt, and that goes back to Yahuwah being superior. I believe the reason Yahuwah judged their mighty ones too was a way of saying to the Egyptians and the whole world, like, listen, I'm the true supreme deity. I am the king of heaven. I am the mighty one of mighty ones. Yes, there's other mighty ones, but they're all beneath me. They all have to serve me. They all are subservient to me. And so, there's all different types of, traditions about the mighty ones of Egypt. And supposedly one of the explanations in the Jewish tradition why Pharaoh didn't know who Yahuwah was, how he says, I don't know Yahuwah, I don't know his name. Some of their Jewish traditions will say that it will expound in that verse from Exodus and say, well, I don't know who Yahuwah is. His name is not in the book of the messengers. So there's even a little Jewish tradition that, the gods of the nations were messengers. So that whole divine council thing was a very, very, very popular cultural understanding of the scriptures very early, even in the Talmudic era, very early. And so it got lost later on once the Sethite theory came through, kind of got lost. But that's always been the ancient understanding, is that you had certain messengers that fell. That's who the nations are worshiping. And, they were given precedence over certain countries as like basically to govern and to protect the innocent of those countries. And we see that in Psalms 82. Yahuwah is judging these principalities, saying, why haven't you judged for the orphan? Why haven't you done this, done that? And he talks about that you're going to die like men. So, I think possibly the gods of Egypt were some of those from Psalms 82 later on. And they're like, listen, we already know we're going to get judged. We might as well try our best. And a lot of them that fell knew they were going to get judged. That's why you think their children, when they get cast out of that one boy that has like a legion of demons, their children, he says, why have you come to judge us before our time? They're like, no, hold on, son of man, hold on. They're like, whoa, this is not our time yet. How do they know they have a time? Yeah. Because it's already established. Their parents are gonna get judged, and they're gonna get judged. And so that's what demons are according to the scriptures. They're children of fallen Malachim, of the Watchers. And they understand this concept, this divine council concept. We don't, because we've been taught that Genesis 6:4 is kissing cousins, part of the problem. So we don't understand what really happened in the days of Jared and in the days of Noah. We don't fully understand what actually was going on. But yeah, you see that all over scripture. We read about another witness of it last night in Psalms 47:4, where it talks about the mighty ones of the Gentiles assemble with Yahuwah. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because we're constantly going through this concept here, constantly, from what we're reading today. There was at least 2 or 3 different references of this that we read through today. I think we'll have like one more extra reader with Deuteronomy 12, but I see Brother Yahusha has a hand up. I'll let him go first, and then we'll finish up today's study. Go ahead, bro.
Just a thought that I had the other day, and this is just a random thought, like your thoughts on it. They asked to go into the pigs, and then the pigs threw themselves off like immediately. Went into the they said, send us not into the abyss, but send us into the pigs. But the pigs took them straight to the abyss, into the waters. Um, it's possible, that of course, it's possible that the pigs just didn't want them in their bodies, and so they. But I mean, if the pigs were possessed by the spirits, you would think that the spirits would have more control over the pigs. So it almost makes me wonder. And these were demons, these were Nephilim spirits that probably most likely were subjected to um, you know, things above them, whether it was the things that spawned them or whatever it may be. And so it almost makes me wonder because um we see the enemy using pigs as offerings, to a defiled offering, like the opposite of Yahuwah. So it makes me wonder if they went into the pigs and then brought them into the abyss to bring an offering so that they wouldn't be um as judged as bad. I don't know. Maybe that's way out in left field. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it could be that it's plausible. I was more thinking along the lines that they maybe they didn't fully know that the abyss is connected to water. I don't think demons know everything their parents know. Because after the flood, right, the only beings that are in the abyss that we know of right after the flood is their parents. They're not in the abyss. So they might not even know where the abyss is. The pigs could have been bringing them into that water and they're not even thinking about it and they're like, oh crud. I don't think they would have known. Their parents would have known, but how can their parents warn them? If they're chained up in Tartarus. So I think also the demons don't know they don't have the knowledge, so to say, of the Eretz or the heavenly realm as much as their parents did. Their parents were high-ranking messengers, watcher class messengers that knew of all these things. Unless they're telling the spirits of their children before they get casted in there, there's no way they could tell them, oh, by the way, the abyss is also in the water. There's no way they would be able to tell them that. You know what I'm saying? You okay, Mom?
Yeah.
So that would be my explanation, is that they just didn't know. They didn't know that there's waters of the abyss. Like they probably, if you think about it, it's very logical. They might have not known about it, because think about it. Were demons at the creation? Contrary to popular belief, the demons, they were not alive yet until Genesis 6. So if there's not demons before Genesis 6, there's no way for them to have foreknown knowledge, right? Of that the waters under the waters connect to the bottomless pit. There's no way for them to know that. So they're most likely asking to be cast into the pigs because they're more actually concerned, I would also say, about Yahusha judging them before their time, because they thought Yahusha was just going to kill them. Like that's really what kind of entered their mind, because they know that Yahusha is the one judging in Psalms 82. They actually have that knowledge. They know who he is. They know that he and the Father are one, just like James says. So if they know he's the Father, they know he's the Almighty in human flesh, and they're talking and they're like, don't judge us before our time, they're kind of not being too concerned about where the pigs are going to take them, probably. And they're probably not, they don't realize it when they're cast into the pigs. They probably didn't even know the pigs were going to go into the water. I don't think there's no way they could have predicted that. So that could have been something the pigs did on their own, and then they're screwed. And so, it's very interesting to think about. I do think what Brother Yahusha brought up, it's a plausibility, definitely. Yeah, but there's a lot of possibilities about why that happened. But I think definitely connects with the divine council concept. It definitely connects with that, and him being someone coined the phrase "destroyer of the mighty ones," and I kind of like that. He's the destroyer of the mighty ones of the nations, and he judged them in Exodus, in the Exodus account, and he's eventually going to destroy them, completely destroy them. When their judgment comes, according to Jude, they are going to get judged at the end of time. So we see a lot of stuff about that and about the divine council within the canon of itself. So yeah, so I think let's see here. I think see who else. Brother Yahusha, would you like to finish us off with chapter 12?
Sure. Deuteronomy chapter 12.
Yes.
Okay.
I had it.
These are the ordinances and the judgments which you shall observe to do in the land. Now these are, hold on, these are the commandments and the judgments which you shall be careful to execute in the land which Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, gives you for possession all the days you live in the land. You shall utterly destroy all those places in which they whom you succeed have worshipped their Elohim, on the lofty mountains and on the hills and under every shady tree. You shall level their mounts and break in pieces their pillars and cut down their groves and burn the graven images of their Elohim with fire, so that their name may be destroyed out of that place. You shall not do to Yahweh your Elohim in the manner they have done, but you shall seek out and come to the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall make choice of in one of your cities, to put his name there and to be invoked. Into that place you shall bring your whole burnt offerings and your oblations and your vows and your freewill offerings and your thank offerings and the firstlings of your herds and flocks. And you shall eat there before Yahweh your Elohim and rejoice with your household for all your possessions and the labors of your hands, as Yahweh your Elohim has brought up to you. You shall not do all that we do here at this day, every one what is agreeable in his own sight. For till now you have not come to the rest, and to the inheritance which Yahweh your Elohim gives you. But when you cross the Jordan and dwell in the land which Yahweh our Elohim gives you for possession, when he shall give you rest from all your enemies round about, and you shall dwell in safety, then there shall be a place wherever Yahweh your Elohim shall choose for his name to be invoked. To that place you shall bring all that I this day command you, your whole burnt offering, and your offerings, and your tents, and the oblations of your hands, and the choice of all your gifts, which you may vow to Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim, and your sons, and your daughters, and your men servants, and your maid servants, and the Elohim who is at your gates, because he has no portion nor inheritance with you. Take heed to yourself that you offer not the whole burnt offerings in every place which you may see, but only in the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall make choice of, in one of the tribes, in one of your tribes. There you shall offer your whole burnt offerings, and there you shall do all that I this day command you. Nevertheless, to satisfy your desire, you may kill and eat flesh in every city according to the barakah of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. The unclean with you and the clean may eat it together, as you now do a roebuck or a deer, but you must not eat the blood that you shall pour on the ground like water. I just want to clarify that that's not saying you eat clean and unclean foods. It's saying that the people that are unclean or clean can eat it together, as you
Right.
No, it's worded weird. I wanna,
Yes.
the unclean that is within you and the clean shall eat it on equal terms. Okay. Only you should not eat the blood. You shall pour it out on the ground as water. I want to come back to that. 15. You shall not be able to eat in your cities the tithe of your grain and of your wine and of your oil, the firstborn of your herd and of your flock, and all vows, as many as you have vowed, and your thank offerings and the first fruits of your hands. But before Yahweh your Allah, you shall eat it in the place which Yahweh your Allah shall choose for himself. You, your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, and the stranger that is within your gates. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Allah on whatsoever you shall lay your hand. Take heed to yourself that you do not forsake the Luim all the time that you live upon the earth. And if Yahweh your Allah shall enlarge your borders, as he said to you, and you shall say, I will eat flesh, if your soul should desire to eat flesh, you shall eat flesh according to all the desire of your soul. And if the place be far from you, which Yahweh your Allah shall choose for himself, that his name be called upon it, then you shall kill of your herd and of your flock, which Yahuwah shall have given you, even as I commanded you, and you shall eat it in your cities according to the desire of your soul. As the doe and the stag are eaten, so shall you eat it. The unclean in you and the clean shall eat it in like manner. Take diligent heed that you eat no blood, for blood is the life of it. The life shall not be eaten with the flesh. You shall not eat, you shall pour it out on the ground as water. You will not eat it, that it may be well with you and with your sons after you. If you shall do that which is tube and pleasing before Yahweh your Allah, but you shall take your set apart things if you have any, and your vowed offerings, and come to the place which Yahweh your Allah shall choose to have his name named upon it. And you shall offer your whole burnt offerings. You shall offer the flesh upon the altar of Yahweh your Allah, but the blood of your offerings you shall pour out at the foot of the altar of Yahweh your Allah. But the flesh you shall eat. Beware and hearken, and you shall do all the commands which I charge you, that it may be well with you and with your sons forever. If you shall do that which is pleasing and true before Yahweh your Allah. And if Yahweh your Allah shall utterly destroy the nations from before you, to which you go to possess, to inherit their land, and you shall inherit it, and dwell in their land. Take heed to yourself that you seek not to follow them after they are destroyed after you, saying, how do these nations act towards their mighty ones? I will do likewise. You shall not do so to your Lua, for they have offered to their mighty ones the abominations of Yahuwah which he hates. For they burn their sons and their daughters in fire to their Elohim. Every word that I command you this day you shall observe to do, you shall not add to it nor diminish it. I'm wondering what time of year this chapter is talking about. I'm not picking that up. And like as far as when it says, but if you are far away, and the city is far away. And then I'm also wondering what it's talking about, the unclean that is within you and the clean shall eat it on equal terms.
Ritual uncleanness. When you are basically, what it's trying to say is that even if you're ceremonially clean or unclean, you will be able to eat it alike because it's not a sacrifice. So
this is just regular food that they're talking about.
Yeah, well, it kind of goes back and forth. Like the other question you had, I think towards the middle to the end of the chapter, if I remember correctly, the context is about Sukkot. So you have like festival tithes, and you would have to bring it to the temple. So there's certain commands in here that are specifically for the temple or tabernacle, where you cannot eat your tithe, because there are tithes like burnt offerings that you can give to the priests, and you can eat as well with the priests. There were certain, like, I think the Masoretic would call it peace offerings that were at the festivals, that they could eat part of the lamb that's a peace offering, or so on and so forth. So what this chapter seems to allude to is the festival tithe for tabernacles, what you're supposed to do. So it's basically saying if you're too far away from the temple, you're supposed to sell that animal because it's too long of a journey for you to drag the animal physically. So you would sell it in your cities for money and take the money, and then once you get to the temple, once you get to Jerusalem, you spend it on the animal that you're going to sacrifice. Either way, you have to go to the temple. Many people have misunderstood that context. And I see people out there trying to spiritualize the temple and trying to say, well, we're on a journey afar off, and we can do it any way we want and have our festival tithes anywhere we want, and try to say that festival tithes are for today because now we're the new temple, yada yada. That's not what it's saying in the context. It's actually saying that either way you do it, you're going to Jerusalem to bring that festival tithe. Either way, there is no festival tithes in the Melchizedek priesthood. There's no way to do it. So I understand why people try to spiritualize it, because they're trying to find a way to do it in their own way. They're trying to find, like, whatever land they're on, they're trying to spiritualize that the human body is now the new temple, and they're trying to understand they mean well, but that's not how to rightly divide that chapter that Brother Yahusha just read. That's an incorrect interpretation, because clearly it's saying both instances that Brother Yahusha just read about, both of them, what's in common is you still, with your money, even if you sell the animals for money, you're still going to the temple. There's still a place to go to. It's not just a random place that you can buy animals at. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of people misunderstand that. And that's why a lot of people are, not trying to make fun, but I always say, we can't be doing random sacrifices in our backyard. Okay. So these tithes are included in a specific priesthood that we're not in right now. These tithes are included in a specific priesthood that we are not operating in. There's no human priests to bring your festival tithe to. And that's what they would have to do. Historically, they would go to Jerusalem, go to the temple, or in the wilderness, go to the tabernacle, right? It talks about in the beginning of this chapter, if you're bringing an offering to Yahuwah, you have to slaughter the animal at the door of the tabernacle, and then you bring it in to get it sacrificed. So just to explain the difference, what Brother Yahusha just read, this is a very crucial chapter, because this gives us the foundation of how to separate animals for food versus sacrifices. This is one of the I think this is one of the reasons I wanted us reading this today, because it gives us a foundation about how there's a huge difference. When they were just talking about food, Yahuwah would say, the doe and the stag, eat it alike. You don't have to even be ceremonially clean to eat it. Why? Because it's not a sacrifice. So it's important to understand the context of all that. Also, I really do like the Septuagint that it says the unclean and clean in you, meaning among Israel. So it kind of gives you a better idea. What I don't like is, I forget it if it's the Masoretic version that just say it's the clean and the unclean. There's no among you or in you in the verse. So there's no way to differentiate. And that's why people think it's saying that you can eat clean or unclean meat. So I'm not a big fan of the Masoretic version of Deuteronomy 12 for that reason. And it really confuses things. It really does. So just to summarize this chapter here, mainly it's about you're no longer able to sacrifice to me wherever you want. Also, the historical context of why he's giving them these commandments is basically he wants to avoid idolatry. So the context of this is pagans. What they would do a lot of the time in the woods or in the wilderness and gardens, they would slaughter the animals and then sacrifice it to demons. And we see this, that he says, no longer will you sacrifice to demons. So Yahuwah has a reason why, if you're giving him a sacrifice, you have to bring it to the door of the tabernacle. There's a reason for it. there's a definite reason for it. Also, verse 4 is specifically talking about the Levitical priesthood. And it actually says that you have to bring it to the place that Yahuwah's name dwells, which is one specific place, the tabernacle or the temple. That's the only places that he's ever put his name on. So again, you can't spiritualize that. Okay. And it even talks about in verse 6, the slaughter your tithes, contributions of your hand, your vowed offerings, and your voluntary offerings, and the firstlings of your herd and of your flock. And there you shall eat before Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall rejoice in all that you put your hand to do, in your households in which Yahuwah your Elohim has brought you. So again, it's talking about festival tithes and all that, and rejoicing. One of the feast days that mainly we're to rejoice at really is tabernacles. I mean, you could say trumpets as well, but as far as I know, Mom, trumpets doesn't have festival tithes. I don't think they do they?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't. So I think this has to be talking about Sukkot. It has to be. And it talks about past the Jordan. Okay. So then it's talking about when they get into the land, what they're supposed to be doing. Pass over the Jordan. And yeah, so just to explain that, that's the best way I could expound on the two questions that Brother Yahusha brought up, which are very legitimate questions.
Yeah.
Especially the one about the dough and the stag. That verse, a lot of people get tripped up on, because unless you understand the context of it, it's I would say the Masoretic is even worse. It's worded very horrible in the Masoretic. Without the phrase among you or in you, you're not going to understand what it's talking about. So anyway, see what else. Choice offerings. The Levites who is within your gates, because he has no portion. So part of the festival tithes was they would have to give a portion to the Levite that has no inheritance. Verse 12, I believe that is. Then talks about. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. If you have like an ISR or Masoretic version in verse 15, it sounds so weird. It says, you shall slaughter and eat according to the Barak of Yahuwah your Elohim, which he has given you within all your gates. The unclean and clean do eat of it. What? Of the gazelle and deer alike. Now, there's a big problem in the Masoretic version by not having it's saying among you or in you after clean and unclean. So why they decided to take away the phrase among you or in you, I don't understand, but that completely changes the meaning of the verse. And then it makes you question whether deer or gazelle are unclean. Why? First of all, the deer and gazelle are both clean. Can't be talking about the animals. So, yeah, the Masoretic text really screws up verse 15 there, in my opinion. So, yeah, and verse
very easily misunderstood.
Verse 22, it reiterates it, so you can get confused again with verse 22. Do not eat the blood, self-explanatory. All that. Do not eat it. Pour it out on the dirt like water. Do not eat it, that it might be well with you and your children after you when you do what is right in the eyes of Yahuwah. And again, the reason for the blood thing, there's multiple reasons. Life is in the blood, number one. You don't want to be taking a creature's life force into you, number one of the biggest reasons. But also there's a religious reason. This is, again, because we don't understand the pre-flood era. We don't understand what was going on in Genesis 6, okay? There were certain practices that were being taught to mankind. Eating of the blood or consuming blood, like drinking blood, eating blood, vampirism was being taught to mankind. Believe it or not, vampirism goes all the way back to the days of Jared. So it's important to understand that when you're talking about do not eat the blood, that it mainly is talking about intentionally eating blood, drinking blood, eating blood and meat. Okay, but the spiritual reason behind it is that that was a very big practice of fallen angels and pagan nations. There's even cultural traditions. I forget, was it the Aztecs? Are they the ones that rip the heart out and drink the blood, and they do all the weird? They do all the weird stuff. I think it's the Aztecs, right, guys? I could be wrong. I think it's the Aztecs. They're the ones that had weird sacrifices to demons. They would rip a person's heart out and drink the blood and all that. So there's definitely a spiritual reason behind it. I understand that the physical application is whatever meat you eat don't have blood in it. I get that. But there has to be a spiritual reason behind it too. So go ahead, brother Yahusha. Is that an old hand, brother, or I don't know, maybe?
Am I muted? Can you hear me?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, I guess I had my mic muted, not on the phone, but on my actual headphones. I would say that it's interesting that you have a lot of cultures today. I know there's probably more. I'm sure there's probably more, but at least in Central America, like within like Mexican and Aztec Mayan cultures, you have a lot of people that believe that, you know, when you eat of something, you take on its life force, you take on its energy, you take on its strength when you partake of its flesh and its blood. They had there's a movie called Ravenous way back, and the guy I believe was I believe it was pointing out like Native American culture, but he it's about this guy that ate. They all got trapped in a cave, and so they ended up eating one another, and then only one guy was left, but he took on their strength and their energy. So that's still very. It definitely seems to be a concept that a lot of cultures still believe, that when you partake of their flesh and their blood, you're taking on their force, their life force, their energy. So,
Yeah, I would agree. I think the reason I brought up the Aztecs is because they were the most obvious, like, one I could think of, where the whole heart ritual and stuff like that. They'll like cut out the heart of a person that's being sacrificed to a demon, and they'll usually drink the blood out of the heart and all that. Yeah, it's very demonic. Like a lot of the Mexican, I would say, like third world Mexican tribes out there and Hispanic tribes out there do a lot of that. The Native Americans, some of them do that. Certainly Ethiopian, I would say Hamite type of tribes still do that today too. And you have the Islanders, you know, Barbados, I'm pretty sure still does it. Funny enough, we actually found this out recently. Barbados, their flag recently, they used the trident as their country flag recently, which, if you know anything about the trident, that goes back to the Greek pantheon and Poseidon. So it's pretty interesting. Some of these nations will just outright tell you which principality rules over them. So yeah.
Yeah, and it started being a big thing in some people in Hollywood that was exposed recently. I believe Katy Perry was one of them, and that they drink somebody who's close to them. Their
Oh, I
blood.
think the one you're referring to is the girl from Transformers. What's her name? She's with that MGK guy. I'm trying to think of her name. The brunette from the Transformer movies.
Yeah, I can't think of it, but I remember there are people doing this.
But yeah, her supposedly there's Hollywood couples actually performing rituals and doing stuff like that, which this chapter tells you not to do. So as far as spiritually speaking, you can pinpoint this, that this is all over these pagan cultures now. Yeah, I think so. Now obviously we don't all kill our own meat, so it's hard to really keep the one commandment that talks about to pour it on the ground, but you can do things to take the blood out. There's obviously there's things to do. There's ways to make sure that there's even a little bit of blood left over of something that's already been slaughtered. I've heard of theories like you could use kosher salt and try to salt it out, finish salting the blood out of the meat. I'm pretty sure Brother Yahusha probably knows of more stuff than I do about that. But yeah, that's a big thing in our walk, is do not consume blood, which, by the way, just to say, this is one of the first things that a new convert, by the way, is supposed to do before even keeping the feast, keeping the Sabbaths. They're supposed to abstain from occultic behavior. So this is what we were talking about. Remember how earlier today we were talking about don't put the egg before the chicken and all that. Well, even when someone has fully received the Basor and they're ready to keep Torah, they say they desire to repent and keep Torah. The first things you should tell them to keep is that you need to get all your paganness out of you, all your pagan ways, like any type of pagan religious worship stuff. You got to get out. Consuming blood, don't eat anything that's been strangled. Those are things that are like top of the list according to the book of Acts. So that's really what we should be warning people first, before they even start keeping the Sabbath or the feast days or this or that, and worried about ceremonial cleanness laws and all that. They really need to worry about getting any type of practices from the occult out of them. I would say if someone has struggled and had a past of using divination, that would be another thing. Like any type of sorcery, get that out of you first. Just that's personally what I would tell people. If you have any history with doing stuff like that and sorcery or in the occult, you want to get that out of you right away. So, but anyway, so I think that's going to be about it for today. I don't want to beat this to a dead horse here. I think we mostly extrapolated what we could from chapter 12 of Deuteronomy here. Hopefully you guys got some edification out of this. And to all of our viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in with us today. Yahuwah willing, we're going to be doing a study soon. I think if it be Yahuwah's will, I'm really desiring to re-record that anti-Messiah study we did way back, because really there were certain things that I felt led to correct and to edit out of that document. So Yahuwah willing, on the next new moon day, if we're able to get together, all of us are able to get together, I would really like to do a re-recording of who is the anti-Messiah study. But either way, just want to say to all of our brothers and sisters, have a great rest of your Feast of Trumpets. Shabbat Shalom. Hope you guys have a great rest of your High Shabbat here. And for those that already kept Feast of Trumpets, the other day, I hope you guys have a great rest of your feast season. I know some people are not keeping it until tonight. So for those of you out there that are not keeping it until tonight, hope you guys have a great Taruah, and Shalom, everyone.